Elon Musk was seated comfortably in his private jet, the hum of the engines a steady background noise as he scrolled through his phone, his mind preoccupied with calculations, messages, and plans. The flight was smooth, uneventful, just another stretch of time between destinations where he could work without interruption. Or so he thought. A shadow fell across his seat, and he glanced up, expecting a routine inquiry, maybe an offer of another drink or a confirmation of the flight schedule. Instead, he found a flight attendant standing before him, her posture composed, her expression carefully neutral, yet something about her gaze felt intentional, calculated. "Mr. Musk," she said smoothly, her voice carrying the professional politeness expected of her position. "I trust you're having a pleasant flight." He gave a brief nod, already shifting his attention back to his screen, but she didn't move. She remained standing, as if waiting for something. "I was wondering," she continued after a pause, her tone light yet unmistakably deliberate, "if you'd consider leaving a tip." He barely glanced up, barely registered the request, until she added, "Of $100,000. The words landed with an almost surreal weight. For a moment, they didn't make sense. Elon's fingers hovered over his phone screen as he processed what she had just said. He turned his gaze fully to her now, studying her face, searching for the punchline to what had to be an elaborate joke. But there was none. She was serious. Completely, unapologetically serious. The absurdity of the request clashed with the confidence with which she had delivered it. It was as if she truly believed it was a reasonable expectation, as if she assumed he'd simply comply without hesitation. His expression remained neutral, unreadable, though behind his calm exterior, his mind worked quickly. $100,000, he repeated slowly, his voice devoid of any immediate emotion. "As a tip." She nodded, not breaking eye contact. "Yes, sir." Silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken tension. Elon set his phone down, folding his hands together as he leaned back slightly. "And what exactly," he asked, his tone measured, "would this tip be for?" She smiled, a cold, almost mechanical smile. $100,000. Elon Musk stared at the flight attendant, his expression shifting from mild amusement to genuine disbelief. $100,000? For what? His voice carried a sharp edge now, his fingers pausing over his wallet as he studied her face. But she didn't flinch. Her posture remained rigid, her gaze unwavering. "Because that's what I deserve," she said coolly, her voice carrying a quiet forcefulness. "You're Elon Musk. $100,000 is nothing to you." Elon let out a short, incredulous laugh, shaking his head. "That's ridiculous. I don't owe you anything. I ordered tea. I'll tip if I want to, not because you demand it." The flight attendant's eyes darkened. A flicker of something unreadable crossed her face, annoyance? Contempt? Whatever it was, it hardened her stance. "You either pay," she said, voice clipped, "or you leave." Elon blinked. "Leave? We're in the middle of a flight. Where exactly do you expect me to go?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. "That's not my problem." The absurdity of the situation made Elon scoff. "This is insane. Get your captain out here. This isn't how things work." She didn't move. The air between them felt heavy, charged with something that made Elon's pulse tick up. Then, she exhaled sharply, nodding to someone over her shoulder. Two security guards appeared from the galley, their expressions unreadable but their intentions clear. Elon's amusement evaporated. "You've got to be kidding me." The guards didn't respond. One stepped forward, reaching for his arm. Elon jerked back. "Touch me, and I'll make sure you regret it." But the flight attendant only crossed her arms, watching. "You have two choices, Mr. Musk. Make the payment, or we escort you to the exit." Elon's patience snapped. "This is extortion. I'm not paying you a damn cent." He turned in his seat, looking around, expecting other passengers to be watching this madness unfold, but the cabin was eerily silent. Unnatural. It was as if no one else existed in this moment. Then the guards grabbed him. "Hey!" He struggled, their grips unyielding. "Get your hands off me!" But they weren't listening. They lifted him, dragging him from his seat. His heart pounded with rage and disbelief as he fought against them. "You're all going to lose your jobs for this," he barked, twisting in their grip, but the flight attendant just watched, her expression unreadable. "You should have just paid," she murmured. Elon was dragged through the cabin, past the empty rows of plush seats. The exit door loomed ahead, a door that couldn't be opened mid-flight, but the symbolism was clear. They weren't letting him go back to his seat. They were holding him there, at the threshold, waiting. "You can't do this," he growled, his breath coming faster now. "This is illegal." The guards said nothing. They stood like statues, gripping his arms, unmoving. Minutes stretched. The weight of their hands on him made his skin crawl. "You're making a mistake," he warned again, but the flight attendant only gave him that same cold, mechanical smile. "We'll see about that." And then, silence. The plane kept flying, the engines humming beneath their feet. Elon gritted his teeth, chest heaving with anger, but he was outnumbered. For now, all he could do was wait. Elon Musk clenched his jaw, forcing himself to stay calm as the seconds dragged by. His mind raced, calculating his next move. He still had his phone, these idiots hadn't even thought to take it. With a quick, practiced motion, he slipped it out of his pocket and dialed one of his security leads. The call connected instantly. "Meet me at the tarmac. I have a situation," he said, keeping his voice low. "Bring the team." The response was immediate. "Understood." He ended the call, his pulse steadying slightly. They thought they had power over him here, but they were wrong. He just needed to wait. The descent began, the plane tilting slightly as it prepared to land. The two security guards still held him at the exit, their grips firm but not bruising. They didn't speak, didn't react to the call he'd made. The flight attendant, standing just a few feet away, watched him with that same cool detachment. "You should have just paid," she repeated. Elon scoffed, shaking his head. "You have no idea what's coming." The plane touched down with a slight jolt. Through the small window, Elon caught sight of his people already in position. Black SUVs lined the private runway, and several of his personal security stood waiting. His team was fast, efficient, ruthless. The engines powered down. A strange, heavy silence filled the cabin. Then the guards moved. Without a word, they lifted Elon off his feet. He struggled, fury igniting in his chest. "Put me down," he growled. They didn't listen. They carried him down the aisle, toward the exit, as if he were nothing more than luggage. The audacity of it made his blood boil. The cabin door opened. Cool night air rushed in. The private tarmac gleamed under the artificial lights, and his men were already moving toward the plane. The moment the guards stepped onto the stairs, Elon's people reacted. A sharp, authoritative voice cut through the air. "Put him down. Now." The command was absolute. The guards hesitated. Then, something shifted. The air crackled with tension. In less than a second, Elon's security team was upon them. The transition was brutal, silent, efficient takedown maneuvers that left the two guards disarmed and immobilized in seconds. Elon landed on his feet, straightening his jacket, shaking off the last of their grip. He barely spared them a glance. They weren't his concern anymore. His gaze locked onto the flight attendant, who now stood at the top of the stairs, watching the scene unfold. She didn't look afraid. That same cold smile tugged at her lips. Elon stepped forward, his people parting to let him through. "You made a mistake," he said simply. Her eyes flickered, but she didn't speak. No excuses. No pleas. Just silence. Then his security moved. In an instant, the entire flight crew was surrounded. A coordinated operation, swift and controlled. They were ushered off the plane, their protests ignored. Some tried to argue, but it didn't matter. The decision had already been made. Elon's head of security approached. "Orders?" he asked quietly. Elon's gaze remained on the flight attendant. "They're done. None of them work here anymore." The words were final, absolute. The weight of them settled over the crew. One of the pilots started to speak but thought better of it. The reality of their situation sank in. They had played their hand, and they had lost. The flight attendant exhaled slowly. For the first time, a flicker of doubt crossed her face. "I was wrong," she admitted finally. "This wasn't supposed to go this way." Elon tilted his head slightly. "No," he agreed. "It wasn't." She opened her mouth as if to say more, but the moment was gone. His security team moved her along with the rest of them. As the last of the former crew was escorted away, Elon exhaled, rolling his shoulders. The night air felt sharper now, cleaner. This was over. One of his men stepped up. "Jet is being refueled. New crew is en route." Elon nodded. Efficiency. That's what mattered. Good. He pulled out his phone, scanning through his messages. As if this whole absurd situation hadn't just happened. Because in the end, it didn't matter. The plane would take off again soon. The world kept moving. And so would he. Elon Musk stood near the open door of the jet, the night air crisp against his face as the last of the dismissed crew was escorted off the tarmac. His security team remained alert but relaxed. This was already over. Or so it seemed. Then, a quiet voice cut through the controlled atmosphere. "Mr. Musk." He turned. The flight attendant stood a few feet away, her posture no longer rigid, her expression no longer cold. There was something different in her now, something almost human. She hesitated, as if choosing her words carefully. Then, she took a step closer. "I was wrong." The words carried weight. They weren't forced, weren't part of some last-ditch attempt to save herself. They were simply the truth. Elon studied her, his expression unreadable. The woman who had once stood over him, demanding an absurd sum with a quiet arrogance, was now standing before him with something dangerously close to humility. "I shouldn't have done what I did," she continued, her voice steady but softer than before. "It wasn't just about the money. It was about power. Control. And I see now that I crossed a line I shouldn't have." There was no audience for this. No cameras, no reporters. Just her and the man she had tried to challenge. Elon said nothing at first. He let the silence stretch, watching as she shifted under his gaze. Finally, he spoke. "What did you think was going to happen?" His tone wasn't mocking or angry. It was a genuine question. The flight attendant exhaled, looking away for a moment before meeting his eyes again. "I thought I could push you," she admitted. "I thought you'd either cave or make a scene, and either way, I'd win. But I didn't think it through. I didn't think about what it would cost." Elon tilted his head slightly. "And now?" She swallowed. "Now I don't have a job. And I don't have an excuse." Another pause. Then, to his surprise, she extended her hand. "I'm sorry." The words were simple. No justifications, no explanations. Just an apology. Elon glanced at her hand but didn't immediately take it. Instead, he considered her, weighing something unseen. Then, finally, he reached out and shook it. "Don't let it happen again," he said. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't an offer of redemption. But it was something. The flight attendant gave a small nod before stepping back. She didn't linger, didn't try to plead her case further. She simply turned and walked away, disappearing into the night along with the rest of her former crew. As Elon watched her go, one of his security leads approached. "Jet is ready," the man informed him. "New crew is on board." Elon exhaled, rolling his shoulders as if shedding the last remnants of the incident. Good. Without another word, he stepped back onto the plane, the door sealing shut behind him. The engines roared to life. The world moved forward. And so did he. Elon Musk settled into his seat on the private jet, glancing out the window as the aircraft taxied onto the runway. This flight felt different. He wasn't tense, wasn't annoyed, just observant. He had barely acknowledged the new crew when he boarded, too preoccupied with messages and business to pay attention. But now, as he adjusted his watch and reached for his drink, something familiar caught his eye. The flight attendant standing near the galley, preparing service, wasn't a stranger. It was her. The same woman. The one who had tried to extort him. The one he had fired. And yet, here she was. Not just her, the entire crew from before. The same faces. The same people who had been escorted off the tarmac that night. He didn't react immediately, but his mind raced. Was this a mistake? A deliberate act of defiance? Before he could say anything, she approached. Her movements were careful, measured, as if she knew every step mattered. "Mr. Musk," she said, her voice steady but softer than he remembered. "Thank you for flying with us again." He raised an eyebrow, waiting. There was more. He could see it in the way she held herself. "We appreciate the second chance," she continued. "More than you know." Elon set his drink down. "Second chance." His voice carried no malice, only curiosity. "Last time, you walked off that tarmac without a job." She nodded. "We did. But after everything, we realized what we had done. We reached out. We admitted we were wrong. And after some difficult conversations, we were given the opportunity to make it right." Elon studied her face, searching for any trace of insincerity. He found none. "So you're back." "We are," she confirmed. "And this time, we intend to do things properly." There was no arrogance in her tone now, no quiet challenge like before. Just humility. A rare thing. She hesitated before speaking again. "I just wanted to say it once more, what we did was wrong. And we are truly sorry." Elon held her gaze for a moment longer, then glanced around the cabin. The others watched from a distance, waiting. Their expressions weren't nervous, weren't defensive, just different. Changed. Regret could do that to people. He exhaled slowly, then reached into his jacket. Pulled out his wallet. The flight attendant blinked, clearly not expecting it. He pulled out a thick stack of bills, casually flipping through them. Then, without ceremony, he placed it on the tray in front of him. "Consider it a fresh start," he said simply. The flight attendant looked at the money, realized what it was. Not 100,000. Not a forced demand. Just a generous tip. Willingly given. She swallowed hard. "Thank you, Mr. Musk." He picked up his drink again, taking a slow sip before glancing at her once more. "Just don't make me regret it." She gave a small, genuine smile. "We won't." And this time, he believed her. The engines roared to life. The plane lifted off. The world moved forward. And so did he.